Assalamu alaikum friends, welcome back to our channel. Today we will be covering the second part of an outline of the history of linguistics. So let's start. Middle Ages in Europe. So during the Middle Ages in Europe, Latin was held in high esteem as the language of the public sphere as the primary written language. So the duration of Middle Age is from 500 to 1400 और उस टाइम पे हमारे पास Latin language it was a dominant language and it was the only primary written language of the time. Gradually interest in the vernacular languages increased among scholars and tradition of writing them began to emerge. Vernacular languages are the regional languages मतलब लैटिन लैंग्वेज के साथ साथ वर्निकुलर लैंग्वेजेस में भी इंटरेस्ट लेना स्कॉलर्स ने स्टार्ट कर दिया एंड दे स्टार्टेड वर्किंग ऑन द vernacular languages as well. Pedagogic grammars of Latin for native speakers of other languages began appearing like there were the people from the other languages or there were natives of the other languages and for them the grammar of Latin were written because pedagogic means he teach something. So grammar of Latin could teach करने के लिए लिखा गया for the native speaker of other languages. In about 1000 an abbot in Britain wrote a grammar of Latin for Anglo-Saxon speaking children. फिर हमें एक एग्जाम्पल भी यहाँ पर दिया गया है which is about the abbot in Britain. He has written the grammar of Latin for the Anglo-Saxon children in about 1000 years. So descriptive grammars of the vernacular were also written. These generally presented the language in the mold of Latin. So इसी तरह descriptive दूसरे जो regional languages थी so for them the descriptive grammars were written like उनके लिए भी काम करना start किया गया. The 12th century saw the emergence of notion of the universal nature of grammar which was later refined and developed by scholars such as Roger Bacon and among them. So 12th century में हमारे पास concept of universal grammar आया और उस पर later on Roger Bacon ने काम किया and Bacon held that grammar was fundamentally the same in all languages, differences being incidental and shallow. और बेकन उनका यही बिलीव था कि जो हमारे पास लैंग्वेजेस है डिफरेंट they all are the same but there is very minor differences between each and every language. So he talked about the universal nature of grammar. A remarkable work dubbed the first grammatical treatise was penned sometime in the 12th century by an unknown author in Iceland. उसके बाद हमारे पास एक वर्क आया जिसका नाम था The First Grammatical Treatise and it was written by an unknown author in Iceland and its main concern was spelling reform or main purpose था वो था spelling reform and to correct the inadequacies of the Latin based writing system of Icelandic. और जो लैटिन बेस्ड राइटिंग सिस्टम था आइसलैंडिक का उसको करेक्ट करना लाइक इसके दो पर्पसेस थे फर्स्ट वन वाज द स्पेलिंग रिफॉर्म and second one was to correct the Latin based writing system. It presented a brief description of Icelandic phonology, drawing for the first time the distinction between sounds and distinctive sounds. Icelandic phonology we were given distinction between the phones and phonemes, like sounds and the distinctive sound variation capable of distinguishing. This text was not published until 1818 and even then it was little known outside of Scandinavia but it anticipated by some 800 years several important developments in 20th century phonology. So till 1818 this work was not published but in 1818 it was published and even then it was little known outside of Scandinavia. मतलब like it was only known to the people of Scandinavia and the people outside of Scandinavia didn't have any knowledge about this work. So but it anticipated by some 800 years later. So इसने बहुत role play किया है in the development of phonology. Now let's start European colonialism from the 15th century. European colonialism में हम लोग 15th century से 19th century के बीच में बात करेंगे. Like in between this time period, what was the development of linguistics? So let's start with the 15th century. From the 15th century, colonization brought Europeans into contact with a wide variety of languages in Africa, the Americas, Asia, and the Pacific. So जिस टाइम पर कॉलोनीज बनना स्टार्ट हो गई so people started to be in contact with each other और at the same time जो languages थी वो माइग्रेट हुई फ्रॉम वन प्लेस टू another place, like from Africa to the Europe and America, Asia and Pacific. From all these regions, language was transferred to Europe. So information about them was gathered by explorer, colonial administrator, travelers, missionaries, and others, and was subsequently disseminated within Europe in the form of word lists, grammars, and text. So जब ये information first इनको gather किया, like who played the role in gathering these information? So some people like explorer, colonial administrators, they travelers, missionaries, they played a very important role in gathering the knowledge about different languages and was subsequently disseminated within Europe in the form of word list, grammars and text. और फिर ये नॉलेज जब ये लोग यूरोप में वापस आए तो इन लोगों ने इस नॉलेज को disseminate करना start किया in the form of word lists, grammars and text. Scholars compiled word lists in many languages and used them in language comparisons. Like जब different languages के words आए in Europe, so the scholars they started a language comparison, like they started comparison between the words of different languages. That certain languages were related to one another became gradually appreciated, and over the century this came to be established on increasingly firmer footing as techniques were developed and honed. Ultimately, this led to the establishment of what is now known as the comparative method and the new grammarian tradition. So like ये language comparison जो different languages के बीच में था, it led to the establishment of the comparative method, and now like in the present time the new grammarian tradition was established by this language comparison. By the late 19th century, the notion emerged that most European languages formed a family of related languages, all of which could be traced back to a single ancient language that over time split into daughter languages that were not mutually intelligible. So, late 16th century में कहा गया, ये आइडिया दिया गया कि जो यूरोपियन लैंग्वेजेस है ये एक फैमिली ऑफ रिलेटेड लैंग्वेजेस है, लाइक डिफरेंट लैंग्वेजेस जो एक दूसरे के साथ कुछ रिलेटनेस शो कर रहे थे, they were classified into a family. ये जो फैमिली है they all trace back to a single ancient language, like ये different languages जो हमारे पास अभी मौजूद है they all belong to only one ancient language and that with time split into daughter languages. और वही ancient language हमारे पास daughter languages में divide होना start हुई with the passage of time, and they were now not mutually intelligible, like we cannot understand these different daughter languages. So Andreas Jaeger proposed this in 1686, putting the homeland of this ancient language in the Caucasus Mountains, from which the languages spread by waves of migration into Europe and Asia. So Andreas Jaeger का proposal आया जिसमें उसने कहा कि this ancient language, like this single ancient language, it belongs to, या फिर इसका जो homeland है, it is in the Caucasus Mountains, from which languages spread by waves of migration into Europe and Asia. Like जो Caucasus Mountains है, there was the mother language, and from there the people start migrating to the Europe and Asia, and through this the language has transferred to different places. By a quirk of history, it is William Jones who is widely credited the discovery of the relatedness of the Indo-European languages and the founding of comparative linguistics. So William Jones actually उसने discover किया था ये relatedness of Indo-European languages, and he is also the founder of comparative linguistics. So after families were recognized and motivated, soon after families of language were now recognized, like फिर हमें कुछ एग्जाम्पल दिए गए हैं. First one is in 1706 Adrian Vreeland proposed that the languages of Madagascar and the islands of Indonesian archipelago were related. So हमारे पास जो एड्रियन रीलांड था, he said कि जो languages of Madagascar है and Indonesian island है, तो इनके जो languages है they form a family. In comes Janus Senovics demonstrated the relatedness of Hungarian, Finnish and Sami. So ये second example है, it is of Janus Senovics. Like उसने ये जो तीन languages थे Hungarian, Finnish and Sami, इन तीनों की relatedness को उसने एक अलग family बना दी इन तीन languages की. So in 1776 Abbé Proyart He observed the relatedness of the African languages Kakongo, Laongo, and Kikongo. Like अब African languages थी ये थी Kokongo, Laongo, and Kikongo और Abbey Proyard he said कि like these three languages belong to a single family. And in 1787, Jonathan Edward he demonstrated that the Algonquian languages of North America form a family. So now Jonathan and Edward he said कि North America में जो languages बोली जाती है so they form a family. In this passage we told about the different families of languages और ये जो families बन रही थी so वो एक region पे based थी. Like in America these different languages they form a single family and in Europe different languages they form a single family in same goes with the Africa. The Danish linguist Rasmus Rask drew together the various threads of historical linguistics of the day into a coherent system of principle for establishing the relatedness of language. तो अब हमें एक और डेनिश लिंग्विस्ट रासमस रास्क के बारे में बताया जा रहा है लाइक he has worked on the historical linguistic and now he has given a system of principle for establishing the relatedness of languages. He stressed the importance of grammatical evidence and of regular sound correspondences between related words. और हमारे पास Rasmus Rask he has given importance to only two things. First one is the grammatical evidence and second one is the regular sound correspondences between related words या cognates. So these ideas were further formalized into the comparative method by August Schleicher and others. Then comes linguistics in the colonial period had other concern that language comparison and classification. Like till now we were discussing the language comparison and like classification, okay, how languages were classified into different families and they all belong to a single ancient language and we also compared different languages. So now there were other things covered in the European colonialism. So grammars of European languages were written as also were grammars of the language of the colonies. So European languages के grammar को लिखा and at the same time the grammars of the languages of colonies they were also written. Missionaries played an important role in the latter endeavor and the grammars of non-European languages dominated from the 16th to 18th centuries was missionaries who played a very important role in the writing of the grammar and their grammar it dominated from the 16th to 18th centuries. Latin grammar formed the basis for the tradition of missionary grammars. Like missionary grammars में Latin grammar को as a base लिया था for writing the grammar of the European languages and the languages of the colonies. Although go to other country, the best of the missionary grammarians were aware of problems in applying Latin categories and structure to other languages. They struggle with varying degrees of success to understand and describe the unfamiliar categories. So the missionaries they relied on Latin grammar as a basis, though they faced challenges in applying Latin structure to unfamiliar languages. Then comes the last para of our today lecture. It is also notable in the 19th century was the Finnish academic program of investigation of the non-Indo-European languages of the Russian Empire, which for a time also involved Russian academics. 19th century में लोगों ने academic program of investigation में interest लेना start किया and they wanted to investigate the non-Indo-European languages of the Russian Empire. This fieldwork-based research yielded grammars, dictionaries, and text collection in Finno-Ugric, Simo-Yedic, Turkic, Mongolian, Paleo-Siberian, and Linguistic languages. Other colonial powers mounted similar academic investigations, though perhaps not as ambitious. These were often undertaken in conjunction with anthropological, biological, and geological studies. So, this study or this program it resulted in the creation of grammars, dictionary, and text collection in various language families. हमें different languages यहाँ पर बताई गई है which is like Turkic, Mongolian and Finno-Ugric. So इन सारी languages में हमें grammar, dictionaries and text collections दी गई. And that's all for today and we will be covering the modern linguistic in our next video inshallah. So thank you for watching and kindly like, share and subscribe.